All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. European roots with that Caribbean soul. A refreshing German lager in a can. You could pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba, your local Sedanos, Presidente, Winn-Dixie. You could find the nearest location. You go to johnnycuba.us. Use the Johnny locator. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. It's a Thursday. Our pal is CBS Sports Fantasy Football expert Jamey Eisenberg. He joins us every Thursday now during fantasy football season. So, Jamey, I saw today on CBSSports.com, you came out with your running back tiers 2.0. I want to go through some of the running back tiers. I want to go through some of the changes. But overall, do you find fantasy football teams that drafters these last couple of weeks leading up to the first week of the season, first game, which is 2 weeks from tonight, are teams trying to target running backs in rounds 1 and 2? Are they trying to go running back? What are some of the trends that you're seeing here?
I think what we're seeing, first off, good to talk to you as always, Zaz. What we're seeing is that there's, at least the drafts that I typically take part in, a movement away from running backs, and what we see, you hear the strategies, hero RB, which is you're taking one, or anchor RB, you're taking one early, and then you're kind of coming back to the position a little bit later, 3 rounds later, 4 rounds later, or, the more prominent one, which is zero RB, which is you're not taking a running back until round 6 or 7, depending on how you build your team. I prefer hero RB. I like to get a running back in the first 3 rounds, and that's typically the, top 13, 14 of my rankings. Obviously being, closer to the top of that list. But I think just the way that, the game has changed, as we know, and teams have used running backs, it's hard to find a bell cow. And, if you can get one of those guys, it's great, but, you can still get by and win your team. And, you go back to last year and some of the guys who are successful, Kyron Williams, for example, wasn't, a guy that was drafted in several leagues and ended up being number 2 in points per game. So there's lots of different ways you can go in building your fantasy roster.
Do you find, someone who decides to go zero running back and they're taking their first running back, like you said, round 6, round 7. Can you have success like that?
Well, you better hope that you hit on your receivers and your quarterback and your tight end. That's a big part of it, obviously. But I think the thing that you find is, you go back to, last year and how some of these guys, emerged, with either late round picks, depending on, where they were taken, or, how you just managed it throughout the course of the season. So Kyron is the easy example, to look at, but, you had, Zamir White at the end of the season. You had Ty Chandler during the season. You had guys that just, were benefactors.
Devon Achane.
Devon Achan's a huge one, once he came on in week 3, so the thing you have to do is when you draft this way is you have to throw a lot of capital at the position. You have to, once you have your core established of your receivers, quarterback and tight end, you're not really looking at receivers again until late. You're just spending a lot of picks looking at running backs. And so Tyjae Spears, for example, was a guy that was a big part of this also. So there's just lots of guys that just emerged throughout the course of the season. And the same thing will happen again. They're going to be rookies that are drafted. Jalen Wright's a good example. He's going to get drafted in a lot of leagues because everybody's excited about the potential of what he could be in Miami. Well, he's probably not going to play very much in the first few weeks because if Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane are healthy, why would he? But something happens to one of those two guys, I think it's going to be a 2-back system no matter what. Then he becomes one of the more popular waiver wire additions, and everybody's racing to get him, and then he's helping fantasy managers win championships. So that's the route you have to go if you go zero RB.
All right, so let's go through your tiers here. Tier 1, and you'll explain, what it means, what each tier means, when that means you're targeting these guys. Tier 1, you have 3 players: Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. I have to assume Christian McCaffrey is your guaranteed number 1 overall pick. So what does it mean? Why are these guys in tier 1? Why is the cutoff after Bijan Robinson? And does that mean all 3 of these guys, they should be drafted by what number?
At this point, they should be drafted in the first 5 overall picks. When you're looking at the receivers at the top and how everything's unfolding with, the holdouts with Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson with the quarterback situation. Breece Hall is coming off an amazing season. Now he gets a better offensive line and Aaron Rodgers back. Bijan Robinson gets a coaching change and a lot of hype that he's going to be used like Christian McCaffrey. So if those guys hit, they're going to challenge McCaffrey to be the number 1 running back. The other 2 guys not named McCaffrey are certainly younger, entering the primes of their careers at that position. So Those are the only slam dunk first round picks. I think we'll see Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor also drafted in the first round, but those are the slam dunk first round picks, those three guys.
All right, so tier 2, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, both of whom you said are acceptable first-round picks. Kyron Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Why is the cutoff after Gibbs? And I know you're a little bit concerned right now with his injury.
I'm definitely concerned with his injury. You look at the history of guys dealing with soft tissue problems, hamstrings, calves, things like that. Unless they've managed it before, you got to be a little bit cautious. So McCaffrey, for example, dealing with the calf, when he suffered his injury, he's obviously managed injuries before. Gibbs, this is now his second injury that he's dealt with this offseason. So again, a little bit more concerning. Plus, it's not like he was just walking into this featured role. We know David Montgomery's there and is going to take a big part of what the Lions are going to help, do what the Lions want to do in their backfield. But these are guys that are going to be, definite round 2 picks, if not round 1 in some cases, like I said, with Barkley and with Taylor and still potentially Gibbs, maybe Kyron Williams as well. But these guys, I think, are the type of players that you can use as your anchor running back, as your hero RB, if you go that route and just, take one of these guys in the first couple of rounds and be pretty happy about it.
Let's say if you're at the end of the first round, so Barkley or Jonathan Taylor, they could be available there to you. And then you're coming back in the second round and some of these tier 2 guys are still available. Should you go with like let's take 2 of these tier 2 guys to start our team, or do you like one of those guys as your anchor and then let's also get a wide receiver?
So it depends if you're a 2 receiver league or a 3 receiver league. So if you're in a 3 receiver league, you certainly want to make sure you're getting a lot of receiver help and a lot of receiver depth. If you're in a 2 receiver league, you could probably get away with this a little bit more because receiver is so deep. So you just have to understand that you're not going to get one of those top 10 caliber wide receivers. You're probably going to go with 2 guys of like a DK Metcalf and a Malik Neighbors, T Higgins and Devontae Smith. So you're seeing where the drop off is. Still very good players. But I prefer to get those guys as almost like my wide receiver 3 as opposed to my wide receiver 1. So I prefer a little bit more of a wide receiver build. And we're talking PPR here where the receptions count as opposed to non-PPR, half PPR where the receptions aren't as weighted. But yes, you certainly can go running back. And I think it's more in your best interest to do that if you're at the back end of the first round, more so than the front end of the first round, because again, you're looking at what's going to be available to you in round 2. And there's a lot of good running back value that will come back in that early part of round 3 as well.
Tier 3. So these are still guys who are worth being fantasies. Are they worth running back 1s on your team? Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Derrick Henry, Rachaad White.
They are, and these are guys that are going to go in the middle to the back end of round 2, depending on, the sites that you look at. For me, these are guys that I prefer to get end of round 2 into round 3. But yes, they all have the potential to be number 1 running backs. The thing with Jacobs going to the Packers, should have a featured role right now with Marshawn Lloyd banged up. AJ Dillon's banged up. With Cook, I think he's going to be one of the better pass catchers with what Buffalo's looking at from their receiving core. Henry, you kind of know what you're getting, but it's on a better team, so hopefully he's still the workhorse, even though he's 30 years old. And then for Rachaad White, he's been fantastic, over 110 receptions in 2 years. So should continue to catch passes at a high level for Tampa Bay.
Tier 4, you have Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon. Let's talk a little bit about Achane here. What can we expect from him? And do we believe it's going to be a split? I know you mentioned, Jalen Wright. So how does that play a role? Is Devon Achane going to emerge as the number 1 running back?
I hope so. Again, you're talking about Mostert was amazing last year. 21 total touchdowns, tied for the NFL lead, 18 rushing touchdowns to lead the position. He was everything Miami asked for and more, and certainly the same thing for fantasy managers. Now you're talking about a situation, though, where Achane, hopefully in year 2, a little bit more bulked up, he added some muscle, ready to handle a bigger workload. The question is, will they give him a bigger workload? We saw last year, most of his big games came in blowouts. Most of his big games came, when Mostert was a little bit dinged up. And in key moments last year, they didn't really lean on him. So will they do that? I think so. But I think the thing with Achane is you're looking at, if he hits, you're talking about a superstar. And that's why you draft him in that spot. So round 3, I think, is the right spot to take a chance.
Rookie running backs. Who are some that you think are going to be productive this year?
So Jonathan Brooks is my favorite still, but you have the knee concern that he's dealing with, and hopefully that's going to be rectified before October. He's expected to miss the first couple of games. When he's good to go, then he should be the best one. Then you got the 2 guys that are going to need some injury help Or let's say, Kyron Williams and James Conner win the lottery, they go live on an island, then Blake Corum and Trey Benson get a significant boost. But they're not going to get featured roles right away. But they are behind at least a one-year wonder potential in Kyron and an injury-prone guy in James Conner. The next group of guys is where it starts to get interesting. So this is where Jalen Wright comes into play. I like Bucky Irving, who's playing behind Rachaad White in Tampa Bay. I think he's got an opportunity to make some plays. Tyrone Tracy got a little bit banged up in camp, but he's behind Devin Singletary. So, not exactly the most entrenched starter of, the guys that we look at. So really, when you start to get to the double-digit rounds is where the next group of guys after the top three come into play. Marshawn Lloyd, another one in Green Bay as well. So if you're just shooting for upside, you don't need them. Jalen Wright is as good as any you'll find. Kamani Vidal could be somebody for the Chargers because they have a couple of aging running backs on that roster, and we'll see if Vidal has a chance to make some plays. So it's not the best class. Like, last year we had two guys at the top in Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. But I do think that there is some depth to this class. And really, as long as Jonathan Brooks is healthy, he'll be the best one.
Excellent job, Jamey. Tell everybody how they can catch you. Of course, everything going on right now and then leading up to week 1.
Yeah, CBSSports.com is the best place. You can check us out, CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports Network, a lot of stuff, TV, multimedia. Easiest place, though, to get our best content is on our podcast, which is Fantasy Football Today, wherever podcasts are found.
Awesome, Jamey. We appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.